Ready?
Yep. Good to go.
Good evening, everybody. This is Seth Engelborg, Chair of the Nantucket Conservation Commission. We're meeting Thursday, October 23rd at 5 p.m. in a hybrid fashion with some people physically present in the public safety facility room and others on Zoom. The purpose of tonight's meeting is twofold. We're going to hear some applications, and then we're also going to have a update on our regulations, which will be the second half of the meeting. So if you're here for that, just stick around. But before we do any of that, the first thing we need to do is establish a quorum of members. And turn the slow jazz off, please. So members, when you hear your name, please respond in the affirmative. Mike Mazzarelli?
Here.
Joe Plandowski?
Here.
Tim Brain?
Here.
John Schaefer?
Here.
Linda Williams? No? All right. So that's 5 commissioners. The next thing we need to do is read through our continuances. The following are continued tonight. Under public hearing, section A, notice of intent, no waiver required. Maloney at 15 Old North Wharf, SC 48 3924, continued till December 4th. At Coda LLC, 42 Shimma Pond Road, SC 48 3930, continued till November 6th. Section B, notice of intent, waiver required pre-January 1st submissions. Wisconsin Beach Preservation Fund, 59 through 83 Baxter Road, SC 48 3759, continued till November 6th. The Summer House of Nantucket Realty Trust, 10 and 16 Ocean Avenue, SC 48 3824, continued till November 6th. Section C, notice of intent waiver required. Robert F. Greenhill Revocable Trust, 16 Hoyks Hollow Road, SC 48 3917, continued till November 6th. And that should be all tonight. Commissioners, is there a motion to approve the agenda? Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
By roll call vote, Mike Mazzarelli,
Aye.
Joe Plandowski,
Aye.
Tim Brain,
Aye.
John Schaefer,
Aye.
Seth Engelborg, aye. That carries unanimously. Thank you all. We'll begin. Our next thing is public comment for items not on tonight's agenda. We'll be holding to the select board's established protocols for public comment, limiting comment to 3 minutes or less, and not engaging in substantive discussion or deliberation, just taking comments under advisement for the future. At this time, does anybody physically present in the room wish to make a public comment? Does anyone on Zoom wish to make a public comment? No. All right. So we'll move on to public hearing. We'll begin down in notice of intent waiver required, section C, with Nantucket Islands Land Bank at 2 Massasoit Bridge Road, SC 48 3924, represented by Liz Phelps. Liz, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Liz Phelps. I'm representing Nantucket Islands Land Bank on this application to treat cypress spurge at 2 Massasoit Bridge Road. The spurge is located within the mode area, adjacent to the parking area. The site is located on the north side of Massasoit Bridge Road to the south of Long Pond and provides access to a trail. Resource areas include the pond, adjacent BVW, and the site is also within natural heritage priority and estimated rare species habitat. The spurge has continued to unfortunately spread despite mowing, so we're proposing to treat the spurge in conjunction with mowing with a wetland approved herbicide. The spurge is located within the 100-foot buffer of the BVW, but outside the 50-foot buffer. But it is, again, within natural heritage rare species habitat. So we have received a determination letter from Natural Heritage, and they did approve the project with no conditions. So I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Commissioners, questions, comments? John, no? Okay. Any members of the public wish to ask a question or make a comment? Let us know, Will, if there's any. If not, do we have everything we need to close this application?
Yes, we do.
Thank you. Liz, would you like to close?
Yes, please.
Is there a motion to close?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mike. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Joe. By roll call vote, Mike Mazzarelli,
Aye.
Joe Plandowski,
Aye.
Tim Brain,
Aye.
John Schaefer,
Aye.
Seth Engelberg, aye. That carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you as well. And the next is also Nantucket Islands Land Bank, 39 and 41 Almanac Pond Road, SC 48, 3926, represented by Liz Phelps. Liz, go ahead.
Thanks again. Liz Phelps representing Nantucket Islands Land Bank. This application is for habitat and land management at our property known as Beechwood Farm. The property abuts the Conservation Foundation and Land Bank owned Norwood property to the southeast. And it's managed in a similar way as protected open space and for passive recreation. The land bank purchased the property in 2020, and the long-term management practices of the property included farming, grazing, and mowing. And these have helped establish distinct vegetation communities, some of which are rare on Nantucket. These communities are dependent on the natural disturbance regimes that are currently maintained by mowing. We're requesting permission to continue mowing the fields on a rotating schedule, maintaining the trails, managing invasive species that might be identified, and managing native sumac that has started to take over the southwest and just to the east portion of the site as well. You can see in the blue is where the sumac is. The site is also located within natural heritage rare species habitat, entirely within priority habitat and partially within estimated habitat. And some of these areas are within the 25-foot buffer to the BBW. So we're proposing to manage the native sumac within the mowed fields using a combination of cutting and treating with a wetland approved herbicide. The land bank would not normally consider treating native species with herbicide, but in this case, due to the nature of how the sumac takes over, we think that it's the only feasible way to manage this rare species habitat without just allowing the sumac to take over. We have tried to mow the area of sumac very consistently throughout the last several years to try to contain it that way, but it has continued to spread. We've been monitoring it over a few years, and it does continue to spread. So unfortunately, we did our own alternatives analysis, and this really is the only feasible way to try to maintain the site as it exists for these rare plants. Natural Heritage has approved the project with conditions. So if the project moves forward, those conditions will be adhered to, and that includes protecting the native species during any herbicide application, and then documenting and submitting reports to Natural Heritage. We believe this is a habitat restoration and maintenance project. So we think that it's providing a net long-term environmental benefit to the resource areas. So we're requesting a waiver on that premise. But happy to discuss.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions or comments? Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Liz, I'm just curious on protecting the plants up against the invasives. How do you go about that? Is that just like careful application, or do you have to put some sort of screening?
Yeah, we would do a survey prior to doing any herbicide treatment. We would survey the area, and we would flag any rare species found. We would document that, and we would protect probably by hand cutting and hand work around the native species, and then also by covering, which was recommended by Natural Heritage to do it that way.
Okay, thank you. Just interesting to learn some more about that.
Sure.
Thank you, Mike. We can also, if we feel it necessary, limit herbicide application to specific techniques Like if we don't want spraying, we could say it has to be glove applied or clip and drip or whatever, if we think there's a reason that would benefit our resource areas.
Great, and we were hoping to have a foliar option where it's thicker, but understood, of course, if there's a condition placed, we would certainly adhere to it. It's just, would be easier in some locations where there weren't as many natives to do foliar, but again, understood if hand application is preferred.
Thank you. Other commissioners? Any questions or comments from members of the public? Do we have everything we need to close this application?
Yes, we do, Seth.
Would you like to close, Liz?
Yes, please.
Is there a motion to close?
So moved.
Thanks, John. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Tim. By roll call vote, Mike Mazzarelli,
Aye.
Joe Plandowski,
Aye.
Tim Brain,
Aye.
John Schaefer,
Aye.
Seth Engelborg, aye. That carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to Ripley, 92 Washington Street, SE 48 3927, represented by Jack Vaccaro. Good evening. We got Grace Griffin, maybe?
Good evening, Commissioner. Can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Jack Vaccaro. I'm still attempting to register, but if it's all right with you, I could proceed on this channel.
Yeah, we see you. Your name's listed as Grace Griffin, but we can't see the video, but we'll recognize that you're here, so.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Mr. Chairman. So this is Jack Vaccaro from Epsilon Associates. I'm accompanied this evening by Leo Asadorian and others from the project team. But we're here tonight to basically provide information to the commission that was requested at our October 2nd hearing. At that time, we presented the project, explained to the commission that we could satisfy all but one of the performance standards that apply under the Massachusetts Wetland Protection Act regulations and the Nantucket Wetland Protection regulations. That one performance standard being the prohibition of structures within 50 feet of the wetland or the edge of the resource area. And we provided what we thought was some reasonable justification for our waiver request at that time. There were some questions and requests for some supplemental information, and I'll just run through those quickly just to summarize the bullet items that we've been working to respond to. The first request came from one of the commissioners that asked that we provide some comparative building footprint areas, the calculations of the footprint areas of the currently permitted condition and the project that is proposed and described in the notice of intent that you're currently reviewing. Also, we were asked to add a 75-foot buffer line to the site plan, which you see on the screen now. We were asked to submit an alternative analysis in support of the waiver request. Also, provide some additional information on the mechanicals for the site and utilities. And also, there was a request that the project undergo review and comment from the Nantucket Coastal Resiliency and Advisory Committee. Taking just in reference to that last item, the project was reviewed at a subsequent meeting of the Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee. I'll let the commissioner, the Conservation Commission's representative to that committee speak to the outcome of that meeting. But let me just quickly review some of the other supplemental information that was requested. As I said, we did submit building footprint calculations for the main house, the garage, studio, and shed for actually 3 conditions: the currently existing conditions, the previously permitted conditions, and the currently proposed conditions. So those 3, call them alternatives, do show that the main house, the area of the main house will increase. The garage studio will increase slightly, as will the shed. So it's about, I want to say about 40% increase in building footprint over the current condition. With respect to the alternative analysis, we did evaluate the three alternatives. Again, the no build, basically maintaining the existing condition. The second alternative being the project that was previously reviewed and permitted by the Conservation Commission, and for which there is a valid order of conditions allowing that project to proceed. And lastly, of course, the currently proposed project. So those alternatives were all reviewed. We did submit the alternative analysis, and evaluating these three alternatives on various criteria. Most importantly, the projects, the alternatives, flood resiliency. Obviously, there's no improvement to the current situation with the existing structures. So that first alternative, the existing condition or the no build, we regard that as a poor alternative in terms of flood resiliency. Alternative 2, the currently permitted proposal, is better. It addresses the resiliency of the main residence, but doesn't address the resiliency of the detached garage and studio. So it's better, but not as good in our view as the preferred alternative, which would also replace the garage studio with a structure that satisfies building requirements for new structures in the flood zone. Also, with respect to setback from the bulkhead, the existing condition is quite close, 25 feet back from the bulkhead. And I'm talking about the closest distance between the existing structure and the bulkhead. For the previously permitted structure, that's about 8 feet further back than the existing. And the at 37.5 feet back from the bulkhead. And alternative 3 stretches it out a bit more. That one is furthest back from the bulkhead at 41 feet. As I said, the total building footprint, this is combined for all structures, 2728 square feet for alternative 1, a little bit more, 2743 for alternative 2. The currently proposed alternative comes in at about 3,700 square feet of total building footprint. And that equates to lot coverages for the existing condition, 18%, again, 18% for alternative 2, and 24% for alternative 3. So that's the alternative analysis. Obviously, the preferred alternative for the applicant is the current proposal. Otherwise, we wouldn't be here tonight before you requesting approval and granting of the waiver. But alternative 3 is the option that we'd like to proceed with. So getting on to the next requested information, there was a request again for the location of the mechanicals, and we presented this to the Conservation Commission with 2 section views, one of the main house and one of the garage. The main house, actually I should call it an elevation of the, I guess would be the south facade of the main house. That shows the condensers being mounted at the same elevation as the first floor of the structure, which is about 2 feet above the base flood elevation. And similarly for the garage, that's a structure that would be serviced using mini splits for the heating and air conditioning. And the mini split for that structure is also at the same elevation, slightly above 11 feet. So that's the supplemental information that was requested that we've submitted and are prepared to discuss this evening. Obviously, we can continue to discuss the project in general, but I would just ask at this point if the commissioner is able to describe the CRAC meeting, the Coastal Resiliency Advisory Committee, and any deliberations that occurred during that meeting. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jack. And we will do that, but before we do that, let's see if anybody has questions related to the material you just presented on the building footprint increases or mechanicals or any of that. So commissioners, any questions or comments related to those things? Mike, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Excuse me, Jack, just so I'm clear, currently, the building as proposed for the client's alternative is moving, it's back farther than what's there now. We're within the 25 with what's existing there, and you're back to about 41 feet, is that correct?
We're just over 25 feet setback from the bulkhead with the existing structure, 25.3 according to Mr. Asadorian, and we're moving it back to 41 feet back with this new proposed structure.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other commissioners? All right, yeah, I mean, I have some concerns and maybe we'll see what Tim says, but still have some concerns about the increase of building footprint on the site. And especially with the alternatives analysis that was presented, what the waiver that was being requested asked for is for no adverse impacts, no reasonable alternatives. They presented in their own submission a reasonable alternative. We have to keep in mind that we permit projects not on the basis of the details, but on the basis of the project purpose. So what's the project purpose here? It's a house with auxiliary outbuildings. According to the submission of this own applicant's representative, they have a project that is completely permitted and could be built today that would solve that same project purpose. It's the scenario 2 that they're talking about. So I don't know how we could possibly consider this project when a reasonable alternative exists. I hear what Mr. Vaccaro saying about wanting to increase the flood resiliency of the garage and outbuildings. Well, there's a process for it. It's called the amended order of conditions request. I think that we should not permit this project because a clear alternative exists. And also beyond the structural footprint, I'm not sure that's the only thing that's going to cause a concern here. If you look at the project plan with the updated buffer zones, the 75-foot buffer zone in there, I don't think they're adhering to the less than 50% disturbance within the 25 to 50-foot zone, and they're definitely not adhering to the mitigation requirement that would be needed to exempt structures out of the 75-foot zone, which is the request for the waiver. That's fine, but it's not correct to say there's just one issue with this project. There's multiple performance standards that are all related, but they fall under separate categories that can't be met, which is why the waiver is being requested.
May I respond, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, go ahead.
I'd like to just respond to two of the statements you've made. First, with regard to the project purpose. We have to acknowledge that the applicant has some role in defining the project purpose. In this case, the applicant seeks to increase the living space so that he and his family can be comfortable in the space. It's about 1,000 square foot increase over what's less than 1,000 square foot increase over what's currently permitted. And I think a reasonable increase in size to accommodate the needs of the applicant. Again, this relates to the project purpose. Secondly, with respect to the project's ability to meet the requirements under the new regulations, yes, we are requesting a waiver, but I wouldn't be so sure that the project doesn't meet the 75 setback requirement. If we can look again at the site plan, you'll see that a significant part of the proposed structure is in fact outside, beyond the 75 feet. And the portion that is within the 75 feet is largely occupied by the existing structure. So we're not talking about necessarily, and I'd like to look at this, but I don't think we're looking at a significant increase in building area within 75 feet. So those are the 2 points I wanted to make. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Leo Wilson. I wanted to find out if you guys can hear me and then add some commentary here. I'm the architect for Mr. Ripley and was involved for the last 3 years.
Just hold on 1 second. You have to just wait till you're recognized by the chair. So getting back to Mr. Vaccaro's point, I hear you, and we'll look for those updated numbers of what's new in the 75, but technically 1 square foot, it's new, it still needs to be waivered. So we're gonna go to Tim now to talk about the process of him bringing this application to the Coastal Resiliency Advisory Commission and what happened at the meeting and any report they have back for us, and then we'll circle back to the architect and any members of the public who wish to speak. Tim, go ahead.
Sure. So there was a little bit of confusion since this was the first time that CRAC had been asked to respond like this, but they were a little uncertainty about how binding what they might say was, but that was cleared up pretty quickly. Jack and Leo and others showed up to represent the property owner. So I'm just going to read a list of the comments and recommendations that came out of the meeting. Page 145 in the town's coastal resilience plan shows property 92 Washington Street Extension is located in a high or moderate coastal risk area, which means areas may be exposed to coastal hazards within the next 30 years or by 2070. Due to the imminent and growing risk, large structural investments are not recommended in these areas under most circumstances, except where necessary to ensure public safety. The expansion of the structure footprint in current flood zones is not recommended. They asked the property owner review property owner best practices section in the Coastal Resilience Plan on page 126. They recommended landscape with native vegetation because it's more resilient to flooding in Nantucket sandy soil. Just a note, there are 2 coastal resilient projects within close proximity to this address. One is Francis Street Beach Improvement Project located at Francis Street Beach and Salt Marsh Center parking lot. CRP recommendation number 2-4, Washington Street Extension and Consu Springs Walkway raising. Future road raising may impact this property. They should be aware of that. According to the Massachusetts Coast Flood Risk Model, this property falls within 100% coastal flood exceedance probably as soon as 2030. In other words, there's a 100% chance that this location will get wet with salt water during a coastal storm event, just to be aware, which I'm sure they are. Also, potential future zoning changes may affect this property. They should be aware of that. And if there are a bunch of more restrictive zoning ideas that are being considered. So if they are thinking about rebuilding their bulkhead, they should speak with the Coastal Resilience Coordinator to determine bulkhead height, as this property falls within the CRP's downtown flood barrier recommendation, which requires consistent heights to reduce flooding. And just in general, the Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee welcomes this type of dialogue at their public meetings, and which are held on Zoom every second and fourth Tuesday of the month at 10 a.m. So that's it.
Thank you, Tim.
You're welcome.
And I know this might have been complicated because it was the first time. So let's clear it up right on the record here. If any crack members watch this later, or we can tell them, first of all, we thank them for their service and providing us these recommendations. But crack is just what the A is, an advisory committee. If there's any commissions or any concerns about their recommendations being binding or what they say being binding, it's not binding. The change in the performance standard in the new 2025 regulations says it's our job, the Conservation Commission's job, to make sure that projects are built in accordance with the Coastal Resilience Plan. But because we have a Coastal Resilience Advisory Committee who helped create that plan, that was why I asked them to weigh in on it. And if they're willing to do that in the future, we would sincerely appreciate it. But ultimately, whether they can comment on something or not, we still have the authority to decide whether it meets the goals of the CRP or not.
Great, thanks.
And I would also personally was not able to attend that meeting because of my day job. I wanted to go, but life gets in the way. So thank you for being our crack representative on the Conservation Commission.
My pleasure.
Do any commissioners have questions related to what Tim talked about? Okay. Okay, in that case, it appears that we have an architect from the project or multiple architects maybe from the project that would like to speak. Everybody's name is Grace Griffin. So the Grace Griffin with your hand raised.
Mr. Chairman,
I'll recognize you for the record, or I'll recognize you at this point. For the record, please say your name and your connection to the project, and then you can make your comment.
Can you hear me, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
This is Tom Ripley. For some reason, I can't get my camera to work. So I'm sorry, you're not able to see me. I'm the property owner. And I just wanted to share a few quick comments with you that I think that don't come through in the presentation. The first is your comment about the permitted set of plans. You're obviously correct. There is a fully permitted set of plans. Those plans were submitted for permit by the prior property owner. They're not my plans. That'll become important in my next point. That couple that sold the property had no children, and the home was really designed for them. The second point is, and it was very material in the HTC process in our application with them. I have two special needs daughters, identical twin girls that have autism, and they will be with me. They'll be with my wife and I forever. And so when we designed the home, the plans that you see in front of you, we designed it with them in mind, because we have to have caregivers and people stay with us to help us with our girls. And so that's a material part of the change in both the footprint of the home, having ensuite baths because of their disabilities, having them on the same floor with us, and then giving our son a place to stay that's not, as he has a family, he has a place to stay with us, and not have them be in the same environment with the girls all the time. So look, that doesn't come through on a form or a document or anything like that, but it's a reality of our life, and it's a reality of what's going into these plans. And so, I don't know where you put that to say it, but it feels like something I have to at least make you aware of as you think about what we're trying to do. Thank you. I'll go on mute and thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Ripley, and thank you for sharing your story. I think obviously it's important, and we do want to wish you the best in making sure your family has its needs accommodated. But unfortunately, in this permitting scenario, those types of considerations are really outside of our jurisdiction. I understand the HCC weighing in on that, or zoning or planning, but we have to make sure that our decisions is based solely on wetland resources rather than any other extraneous circumstances. Does anybody else from the project's representative team wish to speak? If so, raise your hand and we will recognize you.
Mr. Chairman, again, this is Jack Vaccaro.
Go ahead.
And I think that that the architect, Leo Wilson, might have a few things he might have to add to the discussion. If not, I'd like the opportunity to speak one more time.
Okay, let's have the architect introduce themselves for the record with their name, connection to the project, and then make their comment.
Sure. I'm hoping you can hear me. It's Leo Wilson. I'm with Hammond Wilson Architects. We've been practicing architecture for about 35 years here. We do a lot of work in coastal floodplains. And so I just wanted to get into some of the specifics why I think we meet the bar, but it's difficult to do because I don't have the ability to share drawings with you. Is there a way I can get that privilege?
Yeah, we can try. I think there's something weird with everybody logging on as Grace Griffin, so so we're gonna try to Just so you know, our policy is if you are planning to share material, we will limit your time to about 3 minutes, so please be brief.
Could you, Mr. Wilson, correct?
There
Could
we
you,
go.
are you in there now?
I am, yeah, we just.
Oh,
were able
perfect.
to
Yeah, go
get
ahead.
Signed in, so, I just want to put up a couple drawings here. Sandy, I'm gonna have you do that, if you can get this up for me. So, as Tom explained, we've been at this for a long time, and one of the things I think is critically important is understanding why we think this is such a dramatic improvement. Let's make sure you guys can see my screen here. Do you have that, Sandy?
Can you guys see our screen?
Yeah,
I can.
you
Yeah.
can see it.
Do you see a site plan up?
Yes.
Yes.
Great. So this is the existing site plan, and you can see the 50-foot setback runs through the middle of this house. This house has been damaged by several floods over its lifetime. It sits down probably, I'm going to say the elevation of the floor is maybe 2 or 3 feet above the outside grade, which is about elevation 4. So this thing sits at about 6. I mean, this is clearly in the floodplain. And if this house was ever hit by VE level wave action, the whole thing is going to be floating around like we've been seeing down in the Outer Banks for the last several days. So when we started this process, we talked about how we can improve this and still meet Mr. Ripley's needs. This property has all the things that you see on it here, not dissimilar to the proposed plan. Now, can you put the proposed plan up for me?
You guys see a change now?
Yes.
So what you see here is we took the entire house and we moved it towards Washington Street. So the whole idea was to reduce what's happening in the most critical part of the property, which was between the shoreline and the bulkhead, and then the bulkhead and that part of the house that faces the water. So those were direct responses to making sure that we were providing improvements that were within kind of the goals of the commission. The other pieces I think are really important here are that, can you put up the elevation for me? It's just the next, is another drawing. Just go forward. Do it down here. There you go. That's the one I want. The backside. Go back to one. So you can see what we've been asked to do here. This is after several rounds. I mean, this entire property now, we've lifted this house up on piers. We provided breakaway components for the bottom, ways for flood waters to get in and out of the property. I mean, these are all pretty big moves to improve the condition in downtown Nantucket to try and provide the program elements I need to make the property successful for my owner, and also meet every demand we can to the greatest extent practical from the commission. Now, again, this is 2 years of time we spent working with the with the historic folks and other components of the approval process. And it's a big struggle for me because we're doing everything we think we can do here to meet the guidelines. But there was a house here before. The width of this house is not much different. Yeah, it's bigger, but it's bigger because there's more volume because of the roof forms we worked so hard to get. So, the comment was made, is it the minimum possible? And the answer is, for this client, we've been very careful about what we tried to do here. So I feel like we've done a pretty good job. And I think I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. Please stop the screen share. Okay. Any other, or Mr. Vaccaro, you wish to speak again?
Yes, just briefly, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. What I'd like to say is that I certainly acknowledge the importance of protecting the resource areas. However, we're not really protecting the resource area as much as we're protecting the function of the resource area. And by that, I mean the ability of the resource area to provide those functions that are deemed important for it, including storm damage prevention and flood control. So yes, while the project does involve an increase in the size of the residence, it is in fact improving the ability of the resource area to provide those very functions. So I would ask the commissioners to consider that nuanced but very important point in making their decision.
Thank you. John, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. What was the original just the footprint of the existing house? Do you know?
Yes, give me just a moment, please. The original footprint of the existing house, 1,800 square feet.
And the new footprint of the proposed house in the one that you're before us now?
2,627 square feet. So
Okay.
around 827 square foot increase.
Increase. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Other commissioners? Yeah, Mike, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you to everybody for the comments and the presentation. And I do want to say that this package was very well put together, but that's a side note. I'm guessing this is probably going to continue this evening. And I certainly am not trying to delay anybody, but I think it would be important there's a lot of variables here, to have a site visit. And then I don't know if any other commissioners think that's a good idea. I mean, we've got seawall, we've got existing structures, and it could be helpful to just see all those pieces together before we make our final decision. That's my comment. Thank you.
Tim?
Yeah, I agree with Mike. I think a site visit would be good. I'm concerned about, I didn't do the math, but it's about a 40% increase in the footprint. And that concerns me, particularly given CRAC's recommendations and what the CRP says. So I'm concerned about that.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I agree with the site visit.
Thank you, Joe. I have a few main points related to all the testimony we heard, and then we have to seek input from the public. So again, I'm sensitive to the owner's interest in the property. I'm sensitive to the architect's time they put into this property. Permitting anything on Nantucket is a very complicated, expensive ordeal. But that doesn't absolve us of our regulatory responsibility to treat all properties the same and base them on the performance standards. And as to what Mr. Vaccaro was saying, yes, it is about the function of resource areas, but the proposed the part in the proposed project that is going to help is the elevation of the house. That can be done, and it's proven it can be done in a different way with a permitted project order of conditions that already exists without increasing the building area to this size. And to say increasing the building area is going to have no impact is just not true. There's more roof runoff, there's more pervious surface, there's less infiltration, there's more possibility for storm damage, given the nature of this area being partly in the velocity zone and the rest being very close. So we can't just say, because you're raising the structure, everything else is fine. We have to do our job to make sure we get the benefits for the flood zone, but also aren't sacrificing the other benefits for the buffer zone to the coastal bank or beach or the other parts of the land subject to coastal storm flowage that we protect. So I'll leave it at that. At this time, do any members of the public wish to make a question or comment? I see John. John, go ahead, and then we'll see if there's public after that.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I just forgot to lower my hand. I'm good. Sorry.
Any public, this is your chance. Okay, so what we need to do here is first we need to ask Will if we have all the requisite information we need to close.
The answer to that question is yes.
And then, Mr. Vaccaro, would you like to close or would you like to continue to consider alternatives for this site?
We'll request a continuance.
Okay, we need to continue to a date certain. I believe our next meeting is November 20th. Let me check that for sure, because there was a problem last time. November 6th, yes, right, but
Will that give you time, Mr. Chairman, to arrange a site visit?
probably not, honestly, because we already have a site visit out in Sconset scheduled for that Tuesday, so it's probably going to be hard to do both in the same day. So I mean, but we could try to. We could definitely see what the schedule is, or the next meeting after that is the 11/20 or 12/4. So it's up to us to decide in collaboration with you as applicant. Will, go ahead.
And not to complicate it more, but I can be available if we can all get together at a different time. Doesn't necessarily have to be posted. I'm thinking our other site visit, we might be running out of daylight. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it would be too complicated to figure out a day, but if we can figure out any other day next week, I'm happy to make it work, so.
We can try, I mean, you can continue to the 6th, and if we don't have the site visit in place or we don't have the information submitted, then you could always continue again, so it's up to you.
Well, we'll continue to November 6th and hope that you're able to get out there before then.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
This will continue till November 6th. That's all the notice of intents we have today. We'll move on to the public meeting. Orders of conditions. Under section A, orders of conditions, no waiver required. We do have to deal with the Pops Lane Holdings Trust at 3 Pops Lane, SC 483830. This closed 2 meetings ago, but we didn't issue the order. So we need to do that now because we're on the last day. Will, you can put this up on the screen and give us an overview, and then we can go from there.
Alrighty, 3 Pops Lane, this was an amended order. I believe they had some changes that were made during the HDC process. We have our revision date, our revised plan date, The order has been amended to reflect changes made during the Historic District Commission hearing process. The existing house will be renovated, the pool reduced in size, and appurtenances relocated. There were no changes in the conditions and no waiver changes required, or waiver addition required, rather. And that was it.
Is this the one where the pool was outside the 100-foot buffer and now it's slightly inside the 100-foot buffer? Sorry.
I can determine that.
Yeah, sorry. I just
No, no
asked
worries.
because if so, we could put the pool conditions on it. I'm pretty sure that
Oh, here's Brian.
Mr. Madden, if you have a procedural answer to that question, please go ahead.
Yes, you are correct, Seth. It did move into the buffer zone.
Okay, thank you. So let's put in all the pool conditions, not just the one that we have there. And while Will does that, commissioners, any other questions, comments, or additions? John, you have anything?
No, I'm good.
Okay,
So I think what I have to do is actually leave that one there and then we'll delete the,
yeah, we can't,
as much as I'd like to delete.
yeah, we can't get rid
condition
of,
20,
we can't get rid of if it's already there.
That would be a foul on the play. All right, now we're bold. So we've added our, I don't think I need to read these, but we've added our standard pool conditions, 22 through 25, but chemical treatments, contact info for the pool company, and the pool draining to be pumped to a truck and disposed of properly at the wastewater treatment plant.
Okay. Everyone good with that? Is there a motion to approve and issue the amended order of conditions as amended?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. By roll call vote, Mike Mazzarelli.
Aye.
Joe Pandowski.
Aye.
Tim Brain.
Aye.
John Schaefer.
Aye.
Seth Engelborg, aye. That carries unanimously. We didn't close anything in section B, so we'll go down to section C, where we have the two land bank applications. The first is 2 Massasoit Bridge Road, SC 483924. We'll get this up on the screen and give us the overview as well.
And I'm just gonna correct that because there's a typo on the agenda. It is 3925.
3925.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I discovered that right before I left.
All right.
2 Massasoit Bridge Road. This order permits the proposed invasive species management at 2 Massasoit Bridge Road within the buffer zone to bordering vegetated wetland. A waiver is required for this project as proposed. We had NHESP. Conditions 18, 19. Condition 20, the quantity and specific type of herbicide used will be reported in writing to the commission on an annual basis. Any herbicide shall be applied by a licensed applicator. 21, should the project show less than 50% regrowth of native species within the first 2 years and 6 months of the permit, the applicant shall file a new notice or amendment for supplementing the area with native plantings and/or seedings. 22, any invasive species found in these areas with fill shall be removed and appropriately disposed of off property. 23, monitoring report including photographs of the treatment area pre and post treatment shall be submitted to commission staff on an annual basis for review. And 24, all reports are required annually by the anniversary of this order's issuance until a certificate of compliance is issued or this order expires. And our waivers are required to 390-2 that vegetation shall not be altered within 50 feet of a rare or significant species habitat. The invasives to be treated are partially within 50 feet but exist in a maintained lawn area. Therefore, the commission finds the project will not cause additional adverse impacts to the resource area and grants a waiver under 390-3H3C of the Nantucket Wetlands Regulations.
Okay.
That's it.
Commissioners, questions, comments, or additions? John, anything?
All good.
Is there a motion to approve and issue the order of conditions as drafted?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
By roll call vote, Mike Mazzarelli,
Aye.
Joe Plandowski,
Aye.
Tim Brain,
Aye.
John Schaefer,
Aye.
Seth Engelberg, aye. That carries unanimously. And the next one for the land bank is 39 and 41 Almanac Pond Road, SC 48 3926. We'll get that on the screen and give us the overview.
Also, John, sorry if I didn't share the last one.
That's okay.
All right, 39 and 41 Almanac Pond. This order permits the proposed mowing or grazing of existing grasslands, management of sumac by mowing and application of herbicide, and invasive species management at 39 and 41 Almanac Pond Road within the buffer zone to a bordering vegetated wetland. A waiver is required for this project as proposed. They had NHESP. Conditions 18, and I just autopiloted on the last one, but some of you may have noticed that it's not actually conditions 18 and 19 because 19 isn't relevant for these. So it starts at 19, and it's the order permits the use of glyphosate or imazamox or equal for use as shown on the label of the specific herbicide. And then 20, quantity and specific type of herbicide used will be reported in writing to the commission on an annual basis. Any herbicide shall be applied by a licensed applicator. 21, should the project area show less than 50% regrowth of native species within the first 2 years and 6 months. I just read these same conditions. Should I read them again, guys?
I think we're good.
Would you like me to?
Yep. The one question I think we discussed is if people have questions about foliar spray application of
Right.
herbicide, thoughts on that? Yeah, Mike, go ahead.
I think they're planning for it, so I'm not overly concerned with putting something into the order of conditions. I don't feel strongly if other commissioners want to.
Okay, yeah, I'm fine with it, but.
Good.
All right. So, in that case, is there a motion to approve and issue the order of conditions as drafted?
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second? By roll
Second.
call vote, Mike Mazzarelli,
Aye.
Joe Plandowski,
Aye.
Tim Brain,
Aye.
John Schaefer,
Aye.
Seth Engelberg, aye. That carries unanimously. And now we'll move on to certificates of compliance. We have one, which is Kurtz at 177 Pulpus Road, SC 48 3887, represented by Brian Madden. Brian, good evening.
Good evening. Brian Madden from LEC Environmental Consultants. So this was an order of conditions that was issued for approval of a pool and some appurtenances, including some patio deck updates and a spa, some landscaping updates. It was issued January 1, 2025, actually. That's an incorrect date in my cover letter, but we had submitted the as-built pool with some accompanying photographs, and everything had been installed in substantial compliance, and be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Will, have you been out to the site and do you have a recommendation for us?
Yes, and yes, we're gonna have continuing pool conditions.
Is everything in compliance?
Yes.
Okay. So let's hear the continuing conditions.
Sorry, that was my second yes, but it was not the most eloquent answer of mine. All right. Our continuing conditions are going to be 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, and 25. So 20 is our lighting condition. And then 21, the pool cannot be drained or discharged into an area within jurisdiction.
They're all the pool conditions?
Yep.
All right. Does anyone have any questions, comments, or additions? Or sorry, does anybody have any questions or comments there? If not, is there a motion to issue the certificate of compliance with ongoing conditions 20 through 25?
Motion to
So moved,
issue.
Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Thank you for the motion and second.
Thanks.
By roll call vote, Mike Mazzarelli,
Aye.
Joe Plandowski,
Aye.
Tim Braden,
Aye.
John Schaefer,
Aye.
Seth Engelborg, aye. That carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll head over to other business. The first item on that is approval of minutes from 8/21/2025 and 9/4/2025. Have people had a chance to review these minutes?
I have reviewed them, and I suggest we not vote on it today. I've got a number of issues.
Okay. Let's submit your comments related to the minutes directly to the town staff, and we'll hope to adopt those minutes for approval on our 11/6 meeting.
None of the comments have to do with people's responses. It has to do with things like there are 9 commissioners.
Yeah, that's
There
a
are
problem.
8 commissioners in another one.
Yeah.
It's got a number of these.
Thank you, Joe. So let's get all those sent over to the town and then we'll figure it out. All right, so we'll hold the minutes off for approval until a future date.
And I might add, it's not a yawn. I've been involved in a lot of legal cases. And this stuff, if somebody pulls out the records 5 years from today, you'll be saying, what in the hell were they thinking?
Yeah, no, it's important to get the minutes right. So send your comments over to Will and he'll get them figured out. Anyone else have
I
any?
have them here, so he'll get them.
Okay. Anyone else have any things about the minutes that they want to be made known? Okay. So we'll hold those out over. With that, we'll go into our public hearing, discussion of revision of the Town of Nantucket Wetlands Protection Regulations, Chapter 390. I'll give a general overview here. So we put into place new regulations that became effective January 1st, 2025, after a multi-year long process. Before that, the regulations dated from 2013. And as part of this process, we made a commitment to have at least annual check-in meetings to see any issues that are coming up with our regulations. We had decided that in May of each year, we would talk about regulations. And in October, we'd talk about policies and procedures. But in May, we had some questions about regulations and policies, and now we have some comments about regulations and policies. So moving forward, we're just gonna check in twice a year, anything related to regulations or policies, once in the spring, once in the fall. Will asked us all to send to him any thoughts they had on regulatory updates. We have a list here. Does anybody have anything that they forgot to send in or want added to this list? Tim, go ahead.
It's really more of a question, and
Yep.
it may not be in our wheelhouse, but is there any requirement for real estate brokers or property sellers to inform the buyer of their proximity to a wetland and that they will have to submit to the regulations of Concom? Is that something that buyers are told?
It is required for real estate professionals to appropriately disclose anything related to that, to their projects that their properties that they're listing. So that would include doing a title check of any permits that may exist that are either valid, expired, or, closed out. They don't necessarily need to tell them that, oh, there's wetlands in the vicinity, but if the buyer, let's say, is buying a property with like plans that exist for a redevelopment, it is certainly within the real estate professional's job duty to tell them that that plan may be subject to regulatory approval. We can't really force anybody to do it. It's an ethics question rather than a jurisdictional question.
Right.
But, if they don't do it and new property owners come here and they get a decision that they don't like, it's not on us, it's on them. So any real estate professional should be taking not just this board's regulatory rules seriously, but all permitting boards on Nantucket, and they should be accurately disclosing any potential, permitting issues that may come with purchasing this property.
So are disclosure rules like that for real estate brokers created by the state?
It's created by the professional trade board. So like,
Oh, okay.
could be like if you're a realtor, it could be like the Realtors Association or the Nantucket Association of Real Estate Brokers or the National Association of Real Estate Brokers. Again, it's an ethics question. I mean, I'm not sure what the legal responsibility is, but you certainly have an ethical responsibility to indicate the reality of the property, what all the assets and benefits of the property, and then what any of the weaknesses of the property. And if you don't do that and you're profiting off of the lack of information, that's a huge ethical concern.
I think it's,
Will go ahead. Yeah, John, we'll go to you after, but Will, go ahead.
I only caught the tail end of what you were asking, Tim, but I think I got it with context clues. But this is a thing I think about a lot, and for the last year or so, I've been kind of making a conscious effort. I've actually gone and spoken for a few different realty offices. I won't name names. But I think a lot of the problem stems from confusion in the first place and not knowing what they actually need in a given property. So this is why sometimes I wish there were three of me, but I try to do some outreach situation stuff. And as a result, I get a lot of emails from realtors, which is good. That was kind of the point of doing it, But the onus is on them, but I think that it relates to the bigger issue of just not knowing what is actually needed, and I think just the overall confusing nature of our regulations, not to put it too bluntly, but it's what it is,
Yeah. Yeah, it's a difficult regulatory environment because there's so many different permitting schemes. But if you are involved in the real estate business at all in Nantucket, you should be apprised of zoning, planning, building, Conservation Commission, HDC, and probably some other things beyond that. And if you're not, you're just not doing a good job. John, go ahead.
Okay.
yeah, I was gonna say, that's right. It's a ethical disclosure thing. Like if a realtor knows that the roof in the house they're selling is leaking, they have to disclose it to the buyer. So it's the same thing. If there's a wetlands issue or something that'll impact the sale, they're supposed to disclose it. So it's their ethical responsibility.
Thank you. So any other things that we want talked about for the regulatory update, or does that not satisfy your?
No, that's fine.
Okay. All right. So before we get into the list and go through them, just a little bit about how this process will work. So technically, we opened a public hearing today. We could make changes that are binding today, as long as we have a advertising period. So we'd have to advertise any changes for a minimum of 3 weeks before they could become effective. We've gone back and forth over the years. Sometimes when we have like large updates, we've had public meetings that are just informational and then public hearings later. We certainly just because we're in a public hearing, don't need to make any changes today. We could say, okay, we need more time, we're gonna schedule another meeting. But if there's things we want changed today, we are legally covered to make changes. So there's kind of like a few things on here that are procedural or policies. So let's talk about those first because it might be easier. So the first is a procedure to approve the orders of conditions in bulk. So as you may remember, when we switched over to the new regulations for notices of intent that don't require a waiver, we do kind of the town meeting style where we call them out, and if anyone wants to open them, we open them. If not, we close them all in bulk. The thought here would be to do the same thing, probably just for projects that don't require a waiver. And what would happen is Will and I would make sure that orders of conditions were drafted and meeting our standards prior to the meeting. And then we would call them out. We would say, does anyone want to open 1, 2, 3, 4, et cetera, for adding additional conditions or whatever it may be. And if not, we would issue all the orders conditions at once. Thoughts on that? Mike?
That sounds like an improvement to me. Just,
Okay.
it's kind of a time saver for, people that are perfectly competent to make those decisions for the commission.
Okay, and again, commissioners would have an opportunity to open it if they wanted, if they noticed something was wrong or whatever. And it would just be for the no waiver projects, I think, because if waivers are involved, it's good to go through them.
I agree.
Yeah, I think
Thanks,
it's
Joe. Tim, yeah, you're
Good
all
idea.
set.
I like it.
John, does that sound okay to you?
Yeah, it sounds great.
All right, Will, does that sound like a reasonable way to move forward?
I love it. My question to you would like meeting, or not even meeting, it can just be an email or whatever,
Yeah.
but would getting them to you like Monday of a meeting week be enough?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even need that much time. One or 2 days is fine.
We can talk
As long
shop.
as it's not Thursday at 4 o'clock.
Yeah,
you know.
absolutely.
1 or 2 days is fine. You know how to contact me, and I'm happy to meet in person if you need,
Yeah.
but it seems like, sometimes I'm usually in the office to sign something anyway, but
Yeah,
you can call me or we can text or email or whatever, but.
Well, I love it. For the record, I think it's a great idea.
So since this is a policy procedure change, it doesn't require any advertising at all. It could go into place for our next meeting. If we don't think we have enough time and we want to hold off, we can, but Will, if you want to test it out for 11/6, let's test it out.
Yeah, and I don't think RJ or Linda would despise this idea either. Not to speak for those who are not with us right now, but
Okay. The other thing that's sort of like policy or procedural, but it probably should get into the regulations at some point is, do you want to go over your cover sheet idea?
yeah, sure. And I didn't mean to take up half our list with this, Seth, but I figured I'd put everything I wanted to put on there. So this is just something Lisa and I have talked about, and it will be super helpful for her taking in new permits, and it will make writing legal ads for me take about 2 seconds. So there's a few people that do this. There's a lot of times there's a lot of information on the first page of the NOI. Sometimes there's not. Kind of interested in requiring like a standardized cover sheet for the front page of any of our permit applications. And it would be, I think I got everything I wanted on here, but project rep and property owner info, submission date, the address, map and parcel, a 1 to 2 sentence project description, kind of like how we do in a legal ad. It's extremely general. Resource areas present, waiver or not, NHESP or not, approval from other boards or commissions required so that I don't have to research said thing. Not that the onus is on the applicant, but kind of look into it. And then I don't know if anybody would have any other ideas for anything that would be useful for you to know on that first page, but I'm just kind of interested in having a cover sheet that answers some very basic intake questions for us so we can check off boxes and get into the rest of it.
Anybody?
I think it's a good idea.
Sounds great.
It'll save a lot of hunting.
Yeah, I think everything that you listed out is good.
Sweet. That's it.
What about, one question,
Yes, go ahead.
what about all the other, boards that they're required to at least apply for? Is that on there too?
Yeah, that's at the
Yeah.
bottom here. It says approval from other boards or commissions.
Yeah, okay.
So the only thing about this one is we can politely ask people to start doing it right now, but it does specifically in our regulations lay out what's required for project submissions. So we would need to add this cover sheet with the list of this information in it to the next regulatory update in order to make it mandatory. Which we can do if everyone's okay with it. Okay,
I think it's totally reasonable, and it's going to, whatever time it takes. It's kind of like the findings page, like it's the findings page was a big improvement on when you're starting to review the packet, approaching the meeting.
Yeah.
all right. Good. And I have one other thing that I forgot to send out, but it falls under the policies and procedures. It's something we talked about before. It is designating a commissioner to be our enforcement officer. So right now we have Will as a conservation agent, and we have any other, town NRD staff members, or actually it could be members of other organizations as well that have the power to enforce. They're really like doing all of the work for us on enforcements. And although we appreciate their work, there had been some discussion in the past about designating a commissioner to oversee the enforcement and help Will out with, checking up on properties and tracking everything. This is going to be a two-part question. First is, theoretically, do we think that's a good thing? And the second is, logistically, does anybody want to do it so that we're not forcing somebody to do it?
There's a third question.
Go ahead.
Are we allowed to?
Yes, we'll check back on this, but we've looked into this. There's actually an MACC directive that says commissioners are allowed to designate, commissions are allowed to designate commissioners as an enforcement officer. It does not, you still have to keep in mind all of the open meeting law issues and all of that. But it's done in other municipalities as well. But we could probably seek a town council legal opinion on it, but I know for a fact other commissions do the same thing.
Yeah, I remembered I think it was you who mentioned it, that you weren't sure if we could appoint another person. That was the only reason, but
No, we can appoint, it would be basically be considered an officer role.
Right.
So, we have the ability to appoint officers that we don't have appointed right now. We can appoint a secretary, we can appoint other officers. So we would just need to establish it as an officer role, and then we would have to appoint somebody to that role. But we could check on the legal opinion, but I know it exists in other
I'll do it.
Okay, all right.
You can't wear a mask, though.
John's jumping in.
Yeah, Mike.
I was, not that I was going to volunteer for the job, so thank you, John, but I was just going to say to Will, is that something, and we're all grown men and women, we can take it, is that something the office is looking for help on, or is it? need to be worked out a little bit?
I think the funny answer is it depends on the month. Sometimes there's one thing going on and there's no problem and there's no help needed. And then there's definitely been times where there's huge enforcement situations going on, and then Will's got to also get the rest of the eggs in the basket.
I have a question.
Yeah,
So it
and again-
sounds like it has value and can be sort of
Yeah.
turned on and off when as needed.
Right, and again, in one of the commissioner's comments I made recently, the commission doesn't direct the staff and the staff doesn't direct us. This person would be working coordination with Will or any other NRD people who would be involved. If he doesn't need help, then he doesn't need help, but it would be good to have someone available I remember one year we had like seemingly a major enforcement every single week for like 5 weeks straight. So, things come up. Yeah, Tim, go ahead.
So what exactly would the duties of this person be? Just go to site visits or?
Yeah, be helping out with the site visits, coordinating with the, representatives if needed, taking in some of the filing, helping Will with whatever he wants, but basically just tracking enforcements.
I don't think it would be too much.
And also we can like try it, and if it seems like it doesn't really work, we can just abolish that position later or have it vacant. So yeah, Will, go ahead.
And even something like, it's funny because this is a thing that I love to do. Who doesn't love some windshield time when you're in a cubicle so often? But even something as simple as whatever ongoing restorations we have going. If you can say, I'm gonna drive by once a month and take a look and blah, blah, blah. I could see little things that could be helpful here and there, and then you might have 3 months where it's like, no assistance needed. Those are the nice months.
Okay. And thank you, John, for putting your name forward. I think because this is a new thing for the commission, we should get an opinion both from MACC and a legal opinion from town council. But again, I think this is a policy change, not a regulatory change. So we'll direct the town staff to get those for us, and then once we have it, we can just make a motion to create that officer position and then make a motion to appoint somebody to that position. Does that sound good?
Sounds good.
All right. Okay. And beyond that, I think everything else is really a regulatory question. So unless anyone has any other thoughts on policies and procedures, we'll move on to that. Okay. So we're gonna go out of order because some of these are gonna be easier to answer than others. The one I want to start with first is my question that I brought, which is, can amended order of conditions requests be considered under the new regulations or any new regulations? So right now, our regulations say that notices of intent or requests for determination of applicability have to be heard under the most up-to-date regulations. But amended orders of conditions or minor mods are they're held to the standard of the regulation that existed in place when the original project was approved, which I understand the logistics of, especially for minor mods. I understand the logistics of because there's an active permit on the project. But I'm really mostly of the opinion that most amended order of conditions requests rise to the level that they could be considered under a notice of intent. Some, not always, sometimes not, but it would be great, essentially, if these additional changes that come in were heard under the new regulations, because otherwise, and even in a normal scenario, orders of conditions are valid for 3 years and then it could be extended for 3 years. But now we're in a scenario with COVID tolling and mass leads acts, and some of these permits that were approved are gonna be valid for like 8 or 9 years. And if we're gonna make any progress in our regulatory updates, every time we make a regulatory update, we're pushing that ball farther and farther and farther down for amendments. But I put this here as a question because I have no idea. I think this is a legal question. So I'll let people say what their thoughts are, but I think this is definitely a town council question.
Other than the legal issue, I'd say it ought to be the new regulations. I mean, you can't go back all those years to try to figure out what the hell's going on.
Right, I mean, it's gonna get complicated too. If we are really updating our regulations every single year, we're gonna be tracking lots of sets of regulations to try to figure out what happened, so.
I
Mike?
would say it was bad enough this year with the carryover that we thought it was gonna be January 1.
It's not over yet. We still have two things here from before January. Mike, do you want to go?
Yeah, so obviously, we're going to get a legal opinion. I guess, just so I'm understanding it, my question would be if somebody came in to amend an order and we've kind of boxed them into a corner because we let them go on a application, but the regulation has changed. They wouldn't have to undo what they've done. They're just.
Well, we could apply a new waiver. Yeah, they'd never have to undo anything. Once you have something approved, it's approved in perpetuity until there's a certificate of compliance issued or the permit expires. But yes, you never have to go back. But if for instance, the regulations changed and they wanted to do something now that didn't meet the new regulations but met the old regulations, they could ask for a waiver request just like anybody else.
John has his hand up.
John, go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it gets down to the fact that we instituted the new regulations for a reason, to make the protections better. So I think it should apply to the amended orders, like you say, especially if it's akin to a new notice of intent. And so if we can do that with the legal opinion, that's what I'd be in favor of.
Okay, and we should probably just, have a discussion about minor mods too, because if we can legally move this over, and then we're just still hearing minor mods under the old regulations, it's gonna be just as confusing. I think we're either hearing everything under new regulations if we legally can, or we're just gonna keep it as is, so. Does that make sense for people?
Yep.
Can we direct this question to town council?
Yes.
All right.
I can't remember who I was actually trying to find the email, and sorry, I just started speaking, but when we first started hearing things under our new regulations, the first amended order we got, I remember us being like,
Yeah,
what do we do?
yeah, it was Mr. Madden.
Yeah, but I reached out, I want to say it was our DEP regional person. But I had it in my head that I talked to either Poochie or Alex back then, and they said that it was like amended orders are under the regs from when they were issued. However,
Yeah, I mean,
cannot
we definitely got,
find the email.
we definitely got a legal opinion that that's what our
Yeah.
regulations said.
Right.
But I never got a legal opinion is that
If we
what our
could.
regulations are required to say.
Right.
But we know for sure that right now, we have to do the amended orders and minor mods under old regulations. But what I'm asking is, do we always have to or not? And if we always have to, we always have to, it's fine, but
We
from
want
there.
to know.
All right, so we'll do that to town council. The next is a way to handle endless continuances other than through an enforcement order. If anyone wants to give their thoughts, I mean, I don't think there's a way, but do you want to say anything?
Well, I think
Put your mic on.
I think dinner on the sand dune is probably taking place as we go month to month screwing around
Yeah,
with
let's-
another continuation.
Yeah, let's make sure we're not referencing projects, but, so again, we said other than EO, so EO is still there. I
And that
know-
was a
I
note
think-
I added, sorry. I
Yeah,
just,
I don't know, like, Will, if you want to say anything, but I think honestly, we are kind of boxed into, we either follow the process of allowing continuances and using enforcement orders, or we do nothing. Or we go into the other enforcement tactics we have, like monetary penalties and criminal procedures and all that, but yeah, Will, go ahead.
kind of echoing what you just said, but first of all, I agree with everybody on this. It's a little crazy sometimes. The reason I threw in the other than the EO was because, and I won't mention the specific project, but we did just amend an enforcement order to get somebody to come in. In the time that I've been here, we've never done that. So to me, I think the answer to this question, is there a way to handle the endless continuances? We just use the tools in our toolbox. Amend
Yeah.
the EO.
I mean, the way is to make a policy change where if we think a applicant is going to be not non-cooperative with our process, we just deal with the whole process through the enforcement order and don't open the notice of intent in the first place. But
And it can, it's almost progressive discipline, if you will, but, we can amend the enforcement order a million times and we can
Right.
go to the next rung.
I know it's not gratifying for anybody, but as I mentioned before, we have endless tools. And we will leverage them if we need to. And when people don't take us seriously, they're going to feel the consequences. I think this commission in this year right now has treated enforcement more seriously than any other conservation commission in past of Nantucket's whole history. But we don't want to do that because we want cooperative, beneficial outcomes. But if we have to, we will. It doesn't scare me and it shouldn't scare any of us. So we should use the tools we have if we need to.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I would agree with that, and I could see some instances where people might try to turn around, the process by saying, I was treated unfairly, or they stepped out of bounds, and is frustrating it as it is at some of these continuances. We could act a little quicker, even ourselves, on putting some additional enforcements together.
Yeah, thank you. And I mean, I see John up there. We'll go to him in a second, but there's some, I would say, pretty minute details that probably nobody but me thinks about. But our enforcement power comes directly from the bylaw and from the Wetlands Protection Act and is reinforced in our regulations. But the code of Nantucket, chapter 390, has specific language in there that allows us to enact civil penalties and to have other types of enforcement measures needed. So it's pretty ironclad. We need to use those things. And if anyone ever, challenges us on it, we're in a good place. So wouldn't be worried about it. John, go ahead.
Yeah, what if we create like a guideline, like for example, if you submit an NOI and then you haven't you continued it for 6 straight months, then, okay, that triggers, X. That way we'd be more consistent and we could maybe, have at least the propriety of, we have a set of rules here and you're not following them. So you really can't say anything to us, Is that something we could do internally as just our own guidelines?
I would say no, actually. I like that and theoretically, but it's pretty clear that we're not able to constrain the actions or opinions of future commissions or future meetings of a commission.
Okay.
So to say that there's a set timeline where things have to act in, I mean, we could say that, but then at the time that commission gets to that mark, they could disregard it. I mean, we
Okay.
can have kind of like an internal schedule that, Will can keep us apprised of, but we can't formalize it in any way that it would be binding at all.
Okay, well, just an idea.
Yeah, Mike, go ahead.
Just one last comment on that. And we have all kinds of tools, but different enforcements could have different emergency timelines. Like if something was so blatant or, really detrimental to a resource area, we might, have to act quicker. That's all.
Yeah, and I think that in cases, again, where violators are being non-cooperative, we should always bring civil penalties, monetary penalties back into the fold, even if it's been an enforcement that's been existing for a long time. You just want to blatantly ignore it, then you should pay. I mean, it should just be a matter of course that we do that for non-cooperative violators.
Sorry, and just one last comment for the record. Obviously, none of us want to be in the enforcement business, but sometimes you have to. So it's not the goal of the commission to chase after, or to I'll be very careful what I say. It's not the goal of the commission to seek trouble and look for enforcements, but sometimes it has to be done.
Yes.
Goal would be to not have wetlands violations.
Yes. The goal
For
of
anybody listening.
the goal of any regulatory board is always compliance. But the reality of life is 100% compliance in any scenario is impossible. I'll welcome anybody to send me an example of something they think is, and I'll find something wrong with it. So no matter what regulatory or jurisdictional authority you have, there's always going to be some enforcements, and we have to deal with them when they come up. All right, I think that handles that, right? Basically, we're just going to use our tools in our toolbox and consider the possibility of having an enforcement officer. Okay, so let's jump back up to creating either a definition or a waiver for test and pilot projects. This was something I wanted to bring to the commission. Again, we can't reference specific projects here, but there have been in the past year some projects that brought a new material or a new alternative or a new implementation that's never been used on Nantucket and attempted to deploy it for a very specific timeline and purpose. And it should be, especially in coastal areas, it should be a goal of this commission to expedite and permit that type of project as long as it's not causing impacts to our resource areas and messing with our performance standards. And the fact that these types of things tend to be low impact and low time commitment, it doesn't necessarily make sense to have them, for applicants to have to go through the whole big process of figuring out like how to waiver it under our existing waivers, because our waivers are a little bit complicated. So we have three routes. The first is to create a definition of test and pilot project that then would be something that would meet the performance standards. And we would have to work it into the whole definitions and performance standards. The second is to create a waiver for test and pilot projects so that if they don't meet the performance standards, they could still be done through that waiver. It would be a special waiver. We've added waivers before. We just added a waiver in this past regulatory update. We added a waiver that says projects that have a significant public benefit can be waivered. That was never there before. That was a resiliency waiver. The third option would be to try to do both of those things, to define it and have a waiver at the same time. So before we go into the tactics, what are people's thoughts generally on this type of implementation?
That technology was great that was brought to us.
Yeah,
And
and it
it-
wouldn't
and it
be just that thing, it could be any test or pilot project.
Any kind of technology, and we shouldn't have them jumping through hoops to get approval.
Okay,
Does this apply to any organization, not just the town natural resources?
yeah, we can't constrain, or we can't give preference to any applicant. All applicants need to be treated the same, so we would have to deal with test and pilot projects on the basis of what's proposed, not who's proposing it.
So it could be a private property thing,
Private-
it could be
Private
land bank.
property, it could be coastal, it could be inland, it could be in any resource area, but it would be something that either has never been used or has been used in very limited instances, trying to essentially create a research hypothesis that's novel, saying, does this work? It's really more like, for instance, it could be something that causes there to be benefits for coastal stabilization or water quality or who knows what, but it's more like trying to test a research hypothesis of, would this work at all in this environment? And so we're not gonna settle on what that is tonight. We're gonna have to come up with a series of definitions of, what constitutes these methods, which resource areas do we want to allow them in or all, do all that work, but yeah, Mike, do you want to go ahead?
You pretty much said what I was thinking there, but if we're learning something from a research hypothesis, it's great because that can help future commissions as well, so.
Yeah, and we can put shorter timelines on these things too. So like in the Wetlands Protection Act, there is a definition of test project. And instead of it being something that gets a 3-year approval, it's approved for only 1 year. So there's we can pull language from there, we can pull from the uniqueness of Nantucket and create something that would work. Yeah, Will, go ahead.
You do have John, if you want to go ahead first.
John, go ahead.
Yeah, so assuming we come up with a new definition and a waiver, is there any authority for like a staff approval that would allow them to implement it faster, or is that not possible? Similar to what HTC does, kind of?
It's possible. I don't know if we should make that drastic of a measure. I mean, there are things that are considered minor activities now in our new regulations that are allowed without coming to the commission. You can just go through staff. But I think given that these are technologies that do have the potential to cause impact, they should come to the commission.
Okay.
All right, Will?
I was just gonna say, well, also, and on that, I think some of these projects that may come down the pipeline are probably potentially interesting things that you guys probably want to hear about anyway.
Yeah.
But the other thing, if you're looking for any opinion on whether we do a waiver or a definition, I think the combo of several definitions and then a waiver seems like what would make sense, even though it probably means more work for me. But
Okay.
I feel like it can be such a dynamic.
Yeah,
It's a
so
broad
I guess
thing.
we'll have you and the rest of the staff start to draft some definitions for commission comment and review. And then we can go from there on that one. Does that make sense for everybody?
Yep.
Yes.
All right. Okay. We'll move on now to definition of coastal engineering structure. And Will, can you get our regulations up on the screen so we can look at the definitions all together?
Yes. I have them in a PDF, but I think it's gonna be easier if I go to E-code, so 1 second. Google's making me do a CAPTCHA right now. I'm selecting all the motorcycles. All right.
So first go to the definition of structure, because it's the one that really matters.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna do this in front of my face.
That's all right. Yeah.
It's easier this way.
Seth,
Yep.
give me 1 minute.
Go ahead, yeah.
Do you guys wanna hold for Tim for a minute?
Yeah, we can take a break till he gets back.
Hit share screen.
Meet out in the lobby, it's warmer out there.
Yeah, the weather in here is always so random. Okay, you all set?
Yes.
All right. So, structure. So it's a combination of materials assembled at a fixed location to give support or shelter. We've had a discussion about this many times, and I think the issues really come down to what fixed location means. And I think they also come down to what a combination of materials that gives support or shelter means. So, for instance, I can reference to the coir terraces. You know, a coir is a material put together, rolled up, and with threads and duckbill anchors and whatever. That's a combination of materials. I don't think, like, factually anybody would disagree with that. Assembled at a fixed location, I mean, it's put into a bank and anchored into a bank. Some people may disagree that it's fixed because it has the ability to be washed away by storm action, but it's staked and anchored into a fixed location to me, and it's to give support to that bank. So we've had this issue before because we want to allow bioengineered or man-made, but coming from natural materials to not meet that kind of combination of materials, because then we're starting to call a lot of things structures. We're calling COR a structure. We're calling any type really of what are those bags?
Oh, Gabion bags,
Well, no, those are already on there. No, the things that are the tubes that are filled.
Geotubes?
No, not those. The small. That's definitely a structure. The small ones that are filled with not
Straw
s-
wattles.
Straw wattles. We're calling straw wattles a structure probably.
Yeah.
So it has a good, like, I personally think that COR terraces are a structure, but if we keep it like this and we don't deal with it, we go down and down and down. Things like landscape fabric are probably going to be considered a structure under this definition, or like netting, or like things that we really don't intend. If we apply the letter of this law to things, like, man, there's a lot of things that could be considered a structure.
Trash hutches.
Yeah, so I think the line personally should be drawn by between things that are clearly completely man-made and like a hard material versus things that could be considered bioengineered or just people putting together a collection of natural materials. So like, yes, the straw wattle straw is natural, and the burlap that's in it is natural. And yes, people are putting it together in a specific way, but I think that's fine. Again, with coir, it's the same idea. The coconut coir is natural, the sand is natural, people putting them together in a specific way. But again, that's fine. But like a steel wall, or rocks, or bricks, or concrete, things like that, I think are on the other edge of the spectrum. So what we need to do is come up with some word or phrase that neatly delineates those things, that neatly delineates what is natural materials from non-natural materials.
So something biodegradable would be a natural material.
Okay?
Is the goal to have them be natural because they'll be less damaging of the environment? Or because they're softer?
Yeah, it's because like they're softer and less permanent, I would say.
Permanent?
And that if we're drawing this kind of difficult to draw line between what's structural and what's not, it probably should be drawn there. So Will, go ahead.
This might be a silly point or a question, but this is always such a complicated, it's too complicated, but if we say natural or biodegradable, then wood is in there. Which,
Good point.
yes, it is, but
Yeah,
also
so, yeah. I mean, it does raise the issue for like timber bulkheads, but,
Right.
Again, I think there's a section down lower that we can do with this. I think,
You could exclude wood.
right.
yeah, I mean, or we could just do the other plan. But let's come back to this because I think the second part is easier to deal with.
John has his hand up.
John, go ahead.
I was just saying, has anybody else considered this? Is there anywhere we can get guidance from another, somebody's already dealt with this language and maybe it's out there?
I unfortunately don't think so. We're at the
would be-
We're at the forefront of this? Okay.
we're at the way leading edge of
That's
yeah,
good.
we're at the very top of the needle, not even at the spear. So we're at such a small surface area that we're way beyond where anyone else in the state is talking about structure. So the other part of this is the fixed location. So if you look at this another way, we can look at, so fixed means something that's there, not moving. But we can look at this another way in figuring out if it's fixed permanently or fixed temporarily. So something like snow fencing, if it's put up seasonally, might not be considered a structure, but if it's put up temporary, or if it's put up permanently year-round for the life of the permit, could be considered a structure. So I don't know if we just want to add one word that says at a permanent fixed location. We get into a little bit of issue with what permanent means though, but in this case, permanent would be for the life of the permit. It's not permanent for eternity. It would be permanent fixed location for the life of the permit. And we could even put for the life of the permit in there if we want.
If you could write like, if the intention is for this, whatever we're calling it, to stay, like if this is still expected to be there after issuance of a certificate of compliance, then it's permanent, right?
The other,
Even if it could go away in 100 years, but.
yeah, the other way we can handle this is not change that definition at all, but have an addition onto the definition that says something like seasonal applications are accepted from this section, but I don't know, there's a lot of like different things we need to do to make sure that we don't cause any unanticipated impacts. So what are people's thoughts here?
What would you do with a artificial oyster bed that had like a metal frame? It's both natural and.
Right, yeah. Yeah, so again, we're getting into these types of issues. The last thing we can do is not change the definition at all. And just every year when we do these updates, if you go into coastal engineering structure, we can just do a much better job of listing out examples. And we can do what Mike is saying, listed out examples of what's not considered. Yeah. So this is not unique to this definition. For instance, in water dependent use, it says water dependent use, blah, blah, blah. And then there's a example, or there's a list of examples of things that are water dependent, and there's a list of things that are not water dependent. So if we don't want to deal with all this regulatory lack of clarity, and we want to just keep the definition how it is, we could fix it by just having a better list of examples and a better list of non-examples. That's an option for us too.
I think even if we redo a definition, I still think a more comprehensive exemptions list could be helpful.
Yeah.
For some of the strange situations that could be created.
The only problem with that is people are constantly engineering new solutions for coastal stabilization.
Yeah.
So if it's something that we haven't seen before, we're back in the same place we were before, trying to figure out. But if we're going to commit to really doing these updates annually, at least it probably won't be as bad as it was before. So
That's why I say.
people's thoughts on that.
Yeah, I would. I mean, there's always going to be new technologies and new products, and we're just going to have to deal with those as they come. But if we update it to 2026, 2027, pull things in, we could even take things out if we wanted to. If something's become obsolete, then at least we're being proactive and keeping up with it.
All right. So I think that's probably how we should. John, do you have anything on that? No? I think that's probably how we should cautiously proceed from now, rather than with tinkering with the definition too much. I think what we should do is build out the examples and exceptions. And so what I'll have everyone do is homework. I want everyone to write their list of what they think qualifies as a coastal engineering structure. And I want everyone to write their list of things they think doesn't qualify. And I want everybody to send them to Will. And then Will compile this whole list and see where there's overlap and where there's conflict. And then the next time we talk about this, we'll work through the conflicts and see which category they go in, or if we just don't say anything about them at all. Is everybody okay with that assignment?
A-okay by me.
Okay.
Haven't had homework in a little while, so.
Will, is that a effective way to move forward?
I love it. You guys got homework instead of me for once. That's-
And this whole thing about temporary devices jogged my mind with the situation we had earlier in the season. That's not about coastal engineering structures, but is about temporary structures. And that's something I do want to talk about today. So we had a kind of murky enforcement issue about a tent that was installed in an area that was subject to commission jurisdiction where a structure would not be allowed. And we talked about enforcement and we never really moved that far on it. We just wrote like a standard letter saying that they were aware of the situation, and that person, did respond and say, we're aware of this too. But what we should do is we should come up with a definition for temporary structures to designate what makes them temporary. Because if we don't do that, I can imagine a scenario where people don't like how we've changed our regulations and not allowed structure in certain areas. Or they just put up a permanent tent with a heater and a TV and couches and all this stuff, and maybe it looks a little unsightly compared to the rest of your home, but you're essentially just increasing the structural area with a loophole. So we should close that loophole. And we should be reasonable about it. But I think personally, anything that's out for more than 1 month should not be considered temporary, in my opinion. Does anybody else have thoughts about other timelines that they want to use?
Well, given that the summer season is kind of it's a season, I think you could probably go for longer. So that if somebody's putting something up just for the summer, so a month is a little short for that
Maybe
situation.
July and August.
Yeah, but the point is not to prevent people from putting things up. It's to
It's to get a waiver.
trigger permitting and making sure that
Yeah,
things are put up through compliant ways, or if they don't meet the performance standards are wavered. But right now, we don't have any real data about these. It might not just, it could be a lot of tents, or maybe it's not just tents. It could be like other structures that I'm not even aware of, gazebos and pergolas and things that you put up and put down that have some like real like structural mass to them. I'm not talking about pop-up tents. Like, we don't have to be crazy like that, but you could create like a wood frame pergola and put it up in your wetland buffer all season, and then if it's just, let's say, Japanese joinery, you just take it apart and you store it in your shed in the summer. How is that any different than that same structure that's actually anchored into the ground? I think we need to be cognizant about these types of things being possible, so.
It's not going to include lemonade stands that are on the corner.
No,
I think 30 days is pretty reasonable. That gives, enough incentive to get something permitted if it needed to be. Much longer than that, you just like, it's,
Yeah.
you're taking it up and down for the season.
so one question would be, how many instances of this are we going to have to deal with if 30 days is the period?
it's probably not gonna be that much, and I think 30 days is a conservative, because a lot of, let's just go with the tents thing right now, are being put up for a weekend. It's
Yeah.
like for a wedding, or for a race, or a special event, or whatever. You're putting up a temporary structure for like a month or months at a time. You're hiring a company to like anchor that into the ground for you in the beginning of the season, in April, let's say, and then take it down in October. There's a few organizations and homeowners on the island who probably do that, but we're not gonna see some like crazy surge in permitting because of this change.
Okay.
I hope.
Yeah, and just like anything else with the technology, I mean, there's, not singling out anybody, but there's a company that is advertising to do like temporary garages even, right now that are,
Yeah.
like kind of like a hoop house structure, but.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen things that are like temporary, like sheds that you use as a playroom or use as like a guy's hangout or whatever, and you put it up in the spring and it feels like a structure, but it's all component parts, and then you just take it down and store it in the winter. We shouldn't be allowing things like that just because they're temporary. If it's a couple of days, like for a specific purpose, and the impact is so limited, fine. But there is a lot of ways to get around it, to use this loophole, and like I feel like I'm gonna give some enterprising business people ideas here if they're listening to this meeting to get around our structural requirements. But by doing this, we should kind of nip that in the bud. John, anything on that?
I'm good.
Okay,
I agree.
so Will, go ahead.
I only had one. Oh, my mic was off. I only had one specific, it's more of like an example question. What about like restaurant tents that are in the flood zone?
Like awning situations.
Yeah.
I feel like they mostly get permitted anyways.
I
but
think they do, but I'm
I
not.
know like we had one, I can't mention the name or location, but it's in the town area, and they came in for a big permit recently.
I remember that one.
Yeah, I mean,
And
I
that
think,
might be the one big one.
I think again, it's the same standard, like those restaurants, by doing that, they're basically adding like another seating area, just because it has a canvas frame to it rather than the wood frame. I don't see how it's any different structurally for us, so we should be treating it. But I think it's, again, very limited cases. We're not like all of a sudden gonna get a ton. And we also have the ability, right, to not require this through an NOI. We could say this is a RDA situation, or we could even say this is a minor activity situation and staff just deals with it. But we need to make a definition for temporary, and then like we want staff to just deal with temporary tent permitting. That's fine by me, but it should be permitted by somebody for sure and checked out, and make sure we should make sure we're not having like hazardous materials in there and things that are going to be bad for the buffer zone. So
And have like a start and an end date.
Yeah.
And we do an inspection to make sure it's down when it's supposed to be down.
I think, are we all good on the 1 month?
We're good.
So Will, do you want to draft the policy for us to review?
Oh, there's plenty. There's always homework for Will.
Or we should say 30 days technically, but
Yeah.
okay. So making good progress. All right, so we have one more thing here on this list, which is a discussion of updates to fertilizer regulations. We received a submission from the Nantucket Land and Water Council with some thoughts and examples from other municipalities. Since this is a public hearing, is any representative from the Land and Water Council with us today?
She was. We lost Willa.
Okay. Have people had a chance to review that submission and understand the basis of what they want to talk about?
I did review it. I thank you, Willa, for that. The question that I had on it, that is, we already have full jurisdiction over that area, and quite often write into our orders that there is no fertilizer use. One, I guess, concern that I had is if it becomes like, it's adopted as into our regulations or deeper into our regulations or as a bylaw, then we forget to then put it in the orders of conditions, and then somebody said, oh, well, it wasn't in my order. But so, I mean, we already have, I don't see it's a big change no matter what we do, because it's already fully in our jurisdiction.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that it would change would basically be like every time we issue a certificate or order of conditions, we have discretion. We can add that in or not. It might be just like an easy middle ground here. So people don't always remember this, but in addition to the numbered conditions that will adds to permits and reads out, we have a whole, like, I think it's 3 pages of general project conditions.
That's why it starts at 18.
It says like very basic stuff in there, like it says you need to have a Mass DEP sign posted on your property in 2 by 3 foot size. Well, not everyone follows that size, but it says prior to any work commencement, you have to notify the town. So all these things that everybody should be doing. Maybe rather than just creating a regulation change, we just put that into the general conditions.
I kind of assumed it was in there anyways, unless I'm just being, naive, but.
No, I mean, right now, fertilizer and agricultural chemical use is completely allowed within commission jurisdiction if we allow it. Like, we could say, go in bordering vegetated wetland and dump glyphosate if we want you to. So, I mean, I think I'm worried a little bit about, I think what it seems like they're back, so we'll hear from them, but seems like mostly what their focus is on residential lawns and turf scenarios. I'm worried that we're gonna create a standard that we're exempting fertilizer from properties or purposes that need it. So like in restoration and things like that sometimes require.
Yeah.
So,
and-
I mean-
I'm sorry.
Hey, guys, I hate to interrupt,
Assuming
but I
that-
have to-
Yeah, John, go
I
ahead.
have to go. I hate to leave this stimulating discussion, but great meeting, and I'll see you guys next time.
No worries. Let it be known for the record that Commissioner Schaefer left at 7:12.
Thank you.
So, yeah, Mike, go ahead.
I just have one more comment too, that we want to, we want to leave the soil test, because that's part of the BMP as a tool for us to know. We could request soil testing for, if we're going to allow fertilizer, but we could always write that into an order
Yeah.
some way.
So this wouldn't change the Nantucket fertilizer regulations or the BMPs at all. They would still remain completely in place. This would just add on to that specifically in Conservation Commission jurisdiction. So like the town of Nantucket cannot create fertilizer regulations that are more stringent than the state standards. That's why we, even though people have tried multiple times over the past 10 years to create an island-wide fertilizer ban, it's just not legally possible. However, we have authority in our jurisdictional areas to do above and beyond that if there is a reason to do that would benefit the performance standards and protect the protected interests of the resource areas that we have jurisdiction over. But that's what I think the suggestion was. But Willa, are you here?
Yes, hi, sorry, I'm just traveling tonight, but I have caught most of this, I think.
Please introduce yourself for the record with your organization, and if you want to give us a little bit more about why you submitted these comments.
Yes, hi, Willa Arsenault here, speaking on behalf of the Nantucket Land and Water Council tonight. This was submitted, much like you were saying, Commissioner Engelberg, it's our hope is to provide sort of more stringent regulations around fertilizer under the commission's jurisdiction. So the BMPs and fertilizer regulations, of course, would stay the same, but in the resource areas under the commission's jurisdiction, they could be outright banned. As you know, there's been sort of a lot of discussion about fertilizer in the last few years on island, and about enforcement specifically. I know enforcement's been kind of under discussion a lot tonight, but I don't know if I missed any specific questions, but I can talk about anything if you have any particular questions.
I think that's it. I think we're just deciding if the policy would be like more restrictive than it's worth, and if it's just better to handle it in well, it's better to handle it in a procedural way rather than a regulatory way.
Okay, so, oh, sorry.
Yeah, so Will, do you want to go in there?
I was just gonna say, there was one point that you brought up that I do know the answer to, but it's just a question of if we would like to do this or not. But I know in the Eastham regs, this was, you had asked like, if this would create potential situations with restorations or situations that need fertilizer. In some ways, the way that this reg was written, to me, it's actually less stringent than how we condition permits. Because we're conditioning permits that no fertilizer can be used, but this is expressly for turf and lawn. And then the way that they deal with situations where fert would be needed, there's a line in there, and I'm probably misquoting it, but it just says with express permission from the commission. So it lists out establishing trees, new gardens, agricultural purposes, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah,
So there's probably a way to do it if we.
yeah, so I don't know if Willa heard this part, but I think the thing that's gonna lead to the type of conditioning that we put into place now being uniform on every project without having this regulatory concern is just taking those conditions that we have on every project, which is no fertilizer, agricultural chemicals, no native species or cultivars, or all native species with no cultivars, sorry, not no native species, all native species. And then also probably like the field condition, and I've voiced this before, and maybe the lighting condition, and taking those all and putting them in general conditions so that they apply to every permit before it's even drafted. And then again, just because it's in general conditions, if we find it very important on a project to highlight it or something else in special conditions, we're not prohibited from doing that. But that would create the same effect of this regulatory change without having to do any regulatory update, without having any confusion about the uses where it might be needed. It would do the exact same thing as what's proposed here with, I think, a lot less work, but that's my opinion.
So, question. So if we make it part of conditions, then it's only going to apply to new projects that come to us and that we permit, and not existing properties that are, would be in our jurisdiction who aren't coming to us for a permit.
Yeah, I mean, no matter what we do, we can't retroactively condition projects that have prior approval.
Okay.
So, if we did a regulatory update, it wouldn't change projects that are approved either. This only goes to the future, so.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Yeah, Will, go ahead.
Now I might be confused, but Tim, were you asking if it were to be in the regulations, then you wouldn't have to you wouldn't have to do a project if you just have a wetland buffer zone on your property, then you can't apply fertilizer.
That's what I was going for, yeah.
Yeah, so I do think that's right. The question is,
Can we do that?
how do you know? How do we know?
Well, yeah, well, that's true of all of it, though.
It's rough. No, I know, but I'm just like, oh, man, what do they do? Shut off the Wesco halfway through the lawn and
Yeah, I mean, again, it's gonna get real complicated to do it that way.
But
And
it's more.
it's more restrictive, and it's more beneficial for the resource areas too, and it would cover like enforcement issues too, where somebody started dumping fertilizer. Right now, we would probably enforce on that, and we would have grounds for enforcing on that because it's causing an impact to our resource areas, but it would be called out specifically. But again, we need to be like reasonable, and we need to do things that aren't going to cause like chaos and panic. So I think, we could maybe do both. We could maybe do the thing for the permits to go forward, and then hold off on this for now and invite people to comment on that. I mean, I think a lot of landscapers and stuff would probably want to comment on that one, and then consider it at that point. But I think we should start. I think we should start like today with the general conditions, because that could go into effect immediately. It could go into effect for the next meeting, and then continue this discussion about the regulatory change later. Will, go ahead.
It seems to me that it's cleanest at this point to put it in general conditions, and then we can continue the dialogue and just make sure that we have all our I's dotted and T's crossed.
Because it doesn't sound like, I mean, everything that we've done today sounds like we're gonna hold it off for additional input or for future meeting, except for the procedural policy changes. But it doesn't seem like we have anything to change regulatory right now anyway. So I think we should make that change from the procedural standpoint, and then when we schedule our next meeting, have this be a topic area for consideration. Yeah, Will, go ahead.
I'm just gonna very clearly state, this could make me unpopular in some circles, but the Eastham and other Cape towns that did ban fertilizer in jurisdiction, it is specifically just turf and lawn. Will, as staff, is all for that.
Yeah, no, I think we should go beyond that. I think we should ban fertilizer for all residential use in any jurisdictional area, with limited exceptions for agriculture, restoration, or industry. But I don't think, even if it's not lawn, I think we shouldn't be allowed.
We have so many, I visit every single property that we permit, right? We have so many properties with pre-existing use lawns that go right up to the edge of the wetland. And I would love there to not be fertilizer on those lawns.
Yeah.
And the
yeah, for
area,
sure.
like the overall area and amount of fertilizer that gets applied in that situation, it's quite a bit more than what's put down on like an individual establishing tree, if you're doing it right, is the caveat. But the stuff that's put on lawn is typically granular, there's a lot of slow release stuff in there. And then you got these lawns that are 5 feet from a wetland, and it's just leaching in there, and it's applied like weekly in some cases.
Okay, well, I think we have a way to move forward here. So, all the policy changes, let's get them into place for the next meeting. And commissioners, do your homework, Will do your homework. And then I don't think we have anything that we actually want to approve and change right now for regulation, so we have a few alternatives before us. If we think some of these things could get moved on quickly, we could schedule a meeting. We could wait until May, which is gonna be the next meeting, or we could just wait to hear from Will if we think anything, if he has answers to anything for us, and then we could schedule it via a scheduling poll type thing. How would people like to proceed?
The latter.
Is that all good? All right. We are in a public hearing, so at this point, if members of the public have any questions or or comments about anything we talked about today or any other regulatory or procedural updates or changes, please raise your hand and let us know.
We got nothing.
Okay. So the last item on our agenda is we need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Is there-
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining?